والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا القاسم مصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين لعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. Shahr Ramadan is a great opportunity for us to worship Allah, to learn more from His holy book, the Holy Quran, to be kind to one another, to think of one another. And when you look at this beautiful and blessed month, even though fasting is very important for us, it is not limited to the month of fasting. It is a month that is the banquet of God, and we are His guests. I'm sure you've been to different gatherings in different people's homes, but the gathering of God and the banquet and the yafat of God is different. That He treats us very special. He wants us to reach Him in this month, and we have to not limit ourselves just to thinking that Shahr Ramadan is a month of fasting, even though fasting is a part of it. It is a month of the Holy Quran as well, because the Quran mentions that this is the month that unzala fihi al-Quran. This is the month that the Quran has been revealed. And when you want to understand God more, you understand Him from His speech. So one of the best ways for us to learn more about our Rabb, to wake up and to not be in ghafla or negligence, is to read the Holy Quran, recite it, and to think about it and ponder and reflect and do tadabbur. And hopefully, inshallah, act upon the Holy Quran. Today we are on verse number 19 in Surah al-Anbiya. Soon we'll be approaching the stories of the prophets. We said about 15, 16 of the prophets of God are mentioned in the surah. The verse that we're going to be mentioning today is number 19, and we'll read it together. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. وله من في السماوات والأرض ومن عنده لا يستكبرون عن عبادته وَلَا يَسْتَحْسِرُونَ. To Him belong whoever is in the heavens and the earth, and those near Him are not prevented by arrogance from His worship, nor do they tire. One of the commentators of the Quran here says that what is the purpose of these verses? That God has whoever is in the heavens and the earth belong to Him, and those that are near to Him are not prevented. They're constantly worshiping God. In a way, to answer the polytheists and to answer from the previous verses that God is not in need of your worship, mankind. And we talked about the purpose of creation last night, and we said that creation has a purpose. And very logically, when you divide it, you say, well, a wise person does something for a reason. God creates a wise being like Allah, creates for a purpose. We do things for a need. Does God have a need? No, He does not have any need whatsoever. So therefore, does He create for Himself? We say no. Then who must He create for? He creates for mankind. He creates because man has a need. God does not have a need. And to answer the question that, well, if He creates for mankind, does He need mankind to worship Him? We say, obviously not. Because God has so many angels in this verse that are talking about those that are near Him. وَمَنْ عِنْدَهُ, those that are close to Him, the Mufassirin, Understand it as angels. There are close angels day and night that yusabbihun al-layla wan-nahar la yafturun. They do not slacken, they do not ease. Always they're worshiping God day and night. O mankind, do not think that God needs your worship at all. If you think He needs your worship, He has already close angels that are worshiping day and night. Everyone is worshiping. Everything in this world is glorifying Allah. And therefore we come to this conclusion that the purpose of creation is not so God can be worshipped, because God is already worshipped. If He wants to be worshipped, the angels, the purpose of creation is for mankind to reach perfection, for mankind to reach Kamal. It is for us. And you see in some of the hadith al-Qudsi, I believe in the book of Mawa'idh al-Adadiyah, mentioning that Yabna Adam khalaqtul al-ashya or kul al-ashya li-ajlik. I have created everything for you. And sometimes when you look at the skies and the stars and the vast galaxies, and you really ponder and you say, God, in tradition, you have made all of this for mankind. You have made all this for you, each and every one that is here. You're part of the reason. I have created all of the galaxies, all of creation, the deserts and seas, all of it for you. وَخَلَقْتُكَ لِأَجْلِي. But I have created you for me. Why? Because you will reach completion through me. وَأَنْتَ تَفَرُّ مِنِّي. But you, or تُفَرُّ مِنِّي, you, تُفِرُّ مِنِّي, you run away from me. So everything is created for us. We are created for God. But we forget the purpose of creation, and yet we are running away from God. How are we running away from God? It says in some of the narrations, when a person gets put in the grave, 3 manifestations happen when a person goes into the grave. One, they see their money manifests. They're being put in the grave. And he talks to the money, and it has a dialogue to the money. It says that I worked very hard for you, for example. I sought you. And money and wealth says, from me, take your kafan. From me, take the burial shroud you have, the kafan. Then he comes to his children, her sons. Says, I spent a lot of time for you. And you see how much parents, they care for their kids. It is good. But not just caring just to care. Caring for God's sake. With intention. So I cared so much about you. What about you? What are you going to do? They say basically, father or mother or whoever, I can place you in the grave. That's what all I can do. I can put you in the grave. Then they see amal. And they see action. And it gets manifested. And there they say, for you I was a zahid. I disdained you. I didn't really seek you. When they said, look, do this dua, I was like, oh, another dua. Do this fasting, another fasting. Do this prayer. It was hard for me. Or it was thaqil, the tradition says. You were heavy. Amal salih, you were heavy for me. It was so hard. But if they said, let's go, for example, and go and do something fun. Let's go and play some, I don't know, the youth here play video games, for example. Let's go and have some fun, hang out. Let's come to my house. Let's joke around and talk. That I'll do all the time, the whole night. I'll come late to my own house. But when it comes to good action and giving some charity, helping a brother out, hey, who can help me here? We need some help, for example, at the Masjed. It's too hard. I don't have time. It's, I don't really feel like it. But that is the problem. So mankind, they forget the purpose of creation. They run away from God. Even though all of this, I want you tonight, when you go out or tomorrow, just to look at the sunset, sunrise, look and say, all of this is for me, God. You created all of this for me, but I'm running away from you. And I do not want to seek you. And I get distracted from you. And I am in ghafla, as how the first verse in Surah al-Anbiya says. So the Quran is introduced as a dhikr, as a remembrance. So that when you read the Holy Quran, Shahr Ramadan, oh, you're awake now. Say, oh, there's purpose in my life. Every day, we talked about last night, the Imam Ali alayhi salam, in the middle of battle when he was asked about God, and he is the commanding general, about Tawheed, they would ask him about the oneness of God, he would answer their questions. And he gave a little bit of a lengthy answer. They're saying, look, basically Imam Ali is busy in war. You don't ask someone who is busy in battle about theology. And he gave a beautiful answer to this person. He said, this is the reason, this is what we want from this tribe, from this group of people. We want Tawheed from them. So all of the prophets and all of the Imams, everything they did was for God. Why? Because they understood the purpose of creation. And throughout their days, that purpose of creation was part of their intention. It says, I'm created for Kamal. I'm created for guidance. I'm created to be guided more. And if a person, dear brother and sister, if you really realize that I have been created to be guided, then you won't nitpick or complain about anything in your life anymore. You complain, God, why did you make me poor? God, why did you make me rich? God, why didn't you make me healthy? God, why didn't you make me unhealthy? I want to have more sick days, for example, at work. I don't want to be healthy all the time, for example. I want to get more, sick days. So all of this complaining is because I don't understand the purpose of creation, which is Kamal. God wants to bring me towards Him. All those other things are secondary. All those other things, wealth, children, anything else in this life is secondary. God is going to give me the best that is the best for me so that I can seek Him. Then I can want Him. Then I will not complain to God anymore. So we see about these angels, that's very interesting. One of the things that Allah says in the Quran is that لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ عِبَادَتِي. Maybe that's for us to learn. They're not arrogant for my worship. Because, question, can mankind be arrogant when it comes to the worship of God? And they can be mustakbir. They can have istikbar of ibadat. How does a person have istikbar of ibadat? For example, a person one time says, I don't want to do dua. I will allow this conventional means to solve my problems. I don't need the prayer to pray to God. If I am sick, I will see a doctor. Doctor will give me medicine, and I get healed. I don't need God for this. Why do I need to make dua? If I'm poor and I need sustenance, God will give me sustenance. I will work hard and I will get sustenance myself. I get a fat paycheck and I'll spend it whatever I want. So this is called istikbar of dua, meaning that you think that you do not need God anymore and that man is free to do whatever he wants. True, we have free will. You have to work hard. Our Imams worked very hard. Even when it came to work, Imam Qadim alayhi salam mentioned that he would sweat when he would farm. And people would come to him and ask for him, Ibn Rasulullah, why are you working like this? Let me bring someone to do this work for you. It mentioned that higher, better than me would work, like Imam Ali would work, Rasulullah would work. Working is good. But being arrogant in dua is not allowed. Saying that I do not need God for help. I will take care of it by myself. This is a mistake because now you've committed polytheism and shirk. You thought that you have a God that does not control the universe. You think that God has just created us like a building, an engineer that creates and goes by, the contractor goes and builds another building and now doesn't need the contractor engineer anymore. This is not the example of God in the creation. The example of God in creation is like right now, I want you to think about it. Think, for example, of a ball in your mind, a soccer ball, let's say. I'm assuming more people like here soccer balls than, I don't know, whatever sport you'd like. Put it in your brain. Put it in your mind. As you're thinking about this soccer ball or whatever, you are paying attention to it. It is being created. You're giving it life, in a way. You're giving it attention. And when I distract you and you stop thinking about it, it doesn't exist. So you need to refresh its existence. You need to refresh the existence of that which you made, or else it vanishes. This is how some of our scholars say is the relationship between God and creation is that an fi'an, second by millisecond, God is giving us existence. God is millisecond by millisecond giving us rizq and sustenance. It is not a God that creates like an engineer and leaves and allows whoever wants to do whatever. that everything is being supplied. And that's why we have the du'as that God never leave me by myself 1 second. So we need Allah. We are nothing but dependency. We are nothing but faqr, in need to God. And when you really think of it, that is what we are. Nobody created themselves. If you created yourself, then why don't you have a long life? How come your life is not up to you? If you do not need prayer, then be immortal. Never become sick. So we see that we are insufficient and we have need. What does a person that have need, who do they turn to? The one who removes the need, the needless, the ghani. So we have to, there's no other way for us, of people of creation, of contingencies, of unnecessary existence. We have to go back to necessary existence. We have to go back to wajib al-wujud. We have to go back and get all those things that we need in order to live. So therefore, istikbar of dua is this, is that a person thinks and is foolish and thinks, God forbid, they need God as the creator, but they don't need God as the Rabb, as the Lord that is controlling everything. And then when we really think about it, this is another step of accepting God that many people forget. Many people know God as only the creator. But how many times in the Quran does it mention Rabb? Rabb means to have dominion and control over this world. And that is the problem. And one of our scholars was saying the main fight, and this is Surah al-Anbiya, the main fight of the prophets of God was not that God is a creator. They accepted him as the creator. Or sometimes even the mushrikeen would say it's Allah is the God of gods, for example. But the main fight is, who is your Rabb? Who is your Lord? Who's in control of the world? And we'll mention, if God is in control of the world, then who should be obeyed? Who should be worshipped? So Rabb, rububiyat of God, lordship of God, is what was the main fight and main challenge of the prophets of God. To say Pharaoh is not the Rabb. The Lord that has created you is the Rabb. The Creator is the Lord. Do not worship Pharaoh, worship Allah. You do not have the chance, or you should not worship or obey anyone else but God, because He is the Rabb of Tashri'. He is the Lord of legislation. He is the only one that can tell us what to do. He is the only one that can command us and say, do this and don't do this, because He is our Mawla. He is our Creator. He gives life. He gives death. Let's look at the story of Prophet Ibrahim. Prophet Ibrahim, this story is when he was a child. They say before, when they look through, the different stories of Prophet Ibrahim, this is before he was a prophet. And here at this time, Prophet Ibrahim, as we mentioned, he was hidden from the people so they could not find him. Because they knew a fortune teller would say that a person will be born that will dethrone you, that will change the ways of the people. So there, Prophet Ibrahim, possibly as a young person, as a child, comes down from the cave. Some say he was in a cave hidden, comes and sees, and that's why he has so many questions. And he sees people worshiping the star. Quran mentions this story. Traditions say this star is actually the planet Venus. They were worshiping this planet Venus. And there, to make this not a lie, some of the Mufassirin say, this is my Lord. The statement by Prophet Ibrahim is a rhetorical question, like, this is my Lord? This is my Lord? And they see worship of the stars. And then for an hour or more he stood with the priests, for example, and thanked God for guiding them to the Lord of Kutha. Then the star dipped below the horizon, and Abraham looked puzzled and said to himself, I do not like those who said, I do not want a Lord that sets. If, for example, the star Venus is my Lord, it sets. Then he saw that they're looking another group. So there might have been different religions back then, or different groups. One that are with the idols, maybe it was religion. Others that are worshiping Venus. Now others are worshipping the moon. Now the moon came out and they started worshipping the moon. And in the same thing, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam says, this is my Lord. And they look at the moon. And after a while the moon sets. And of course the moon of the God of Ibrahim does not set. Then it comes to the sun. And this is my Lord, for example. This is bigger. And yet the sun sets. And Prophet Ibrahim very clearly mentions that my Lord cannot set. Very clearly showing them that the true Lord is the Lord that doesn't have any need. The true Lord is the one that is in control of everything in the world. Not just a sign, not just a light. So therefore we understand that the fight of Prophet Ibrahim, the prophets, or that I must believe in one God, one Creator, I must believe in one Rabb, and therefore I must worship that God that is in control, because these idols cannot do anything. Or it mentions in the Quran, those idols, for example, if you say they do something, can they even create a fly? Can they even create a fly? They cannot do anything. They're harmless. So therefore we understand that there is this relationship between a tawheed, a thought, that God is one, tawheed al-sifat, the attributes of God are one, or His essence is, His main essence is His attributes, His essence is His attributes, and then tawheed, when it comes to rububiyyat, when you believe in such a God, then you say, then who else am I going to worship? I say, I worship Allah. I worship Him. I should not worship anyone else. So there's a relationship, but at the end of tawheed, of ubudiyyat, meaning that I only worship, I only listen to God because He is the Creator, He is the Rabb. Now let's go through the other verses, inshallah. So we said that وَمَنْ عِنْدَهُ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ عِبَادَتِهِ وَلَا يَسْتَهْزِرُونَ. So therefore they do not have any type of hasr. Hasr here means to be spread. The translation here would be that they in any way do not tire here. يُسَبِّحُونَ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارَ لَا يَفْتُرُونَ. And then we go to next verse 21. أَمِ اتَّخَذُوا آلِهَةً مِنَ الْأَرْضِ هُمْ يُنْشِرُونَ. Have they chosen deities from earth? Can such deities give life to anyone? So therefore we see, لَوْ كَانَ فِيهِمَا آلِهَةٌ إِلَّا اللَّهُ لَفَسَدَتَا. And if there were other lords besides God, they would have been ruined. فَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَرْشِ عَمَّا يَصِفُونَ. Therefore, so exalted is Allah, Lord of the throne, above what they describe. So now we go into this topic as to if there were other lords, there would be fasad in the world. There would be conflict. Because if you have multiple gods, then each god would want to do something different. Each god would have its own desire. Each god would have its own taste. And if they're exactly one God, then there would be one God. But each God must be separate from the other God somehow. And when each God is separate from the other God, that God also creates in a different way. So therefore, if there are multiple gods, there would be ikhtilaf, there would be dispute. So how do we know that Allah is one? We say that this Allah, this being that we worship, He is, in reality, this Allah has no need whatsoever and He is complete. There is no room for another God. Because if we say there needs to be multiple gods, then you're saying that this God that you have is insufficient, is not sufficient for you. Then He's lacking something. Because when you need 2 or 3 or 4, and they're not exactly identical, it means that one has something different than the other. So therefore, one of the best proofs of tawheed, of monotheism, is the fact that God is one, because if God was not one, then there would be a need for other gods, and if there's a need for other gods, then in reality what you're saying is that God is insufficient, so that's not God itself. So one of the best proofs of Tawheed is that God does not like anything. He does not have any comparison to humans. He does not have any need whatsoever. He is ghani. He is needless. Therefore, He is complete. And once He's complete, there is no room for another God. There's no room for another God. لا يسأل عما يفعل وهم يسألون. He is not questioned about what He does, but they will be questioned. In this last verse, we'll read it. أم اتخذوا من دونه آلهة قل هاتوا برهانكم هذا ذكر من معي وذكر من قبلي بل أكثرهم لا يعلمون الحق فهم معرضون. Verse 24. Or have they taken gods besides Him? Say, O Muhammad, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Produce your proof. This is the message of those with me and the message of those before me, but most of them do not know the truth, so they are turning away. So therefore we see at the end of this verse and this discussion that we have, if they are gods besides Allah, then what is their proof? In this message that we are saying, the message of Tawheed and monotheism, is the message of those that are with Rasulullah. This is the message of those before him, from Prophet Adam to Prophet Nuh, these around 25 prophets in the Quran, these 124,000 prophets. All of them would combat the people and challenge the people and those that were polytheists to teach them that Allah is one, that there is no other gods. In these last few moments, we'll talk about, even though we truly believe in one God, are we true monotheists? Are we true muwahhids? When you see one of the characteristics of some of our great ulama, they would describe them as being a muwahhid, a monotheist. Why? Because they lived with Allah. Everything they did was for God. But yet, if we separate ourselves and you go back to thinking that I do not need Allah for every second of existence, I do not need God for everything, then in reality I am performing shirk, the minor shirk, when I do things for other than God. So one of the important things that we have to think about is that, am I a true monotheist? Am I a true muwahhid? And hopefully Shahr Ramadan is one of those time periods that I go back to Tawheed, that everything that I do is for God. Even if I love my children and I raise them, I say I'm going to raise them to worship Allah. Allah has given me this amana. When I get married and this is my spouse, for example, Allah has given me this spouse. When I go to work, I say that I'm going to be working because God will be happy and satisfied with me when I work. When I come to the Masjed. So when you start discovering yourself and your intentions, you see, God forbid, I might have a lot of intentions that is for me. And a lot of those intentions are not for God. And that throughout my life, when I'm living and I'm working throughout the day, I say, oh no, many things I did for my nafs, my lower desires. I came to do this because it was easier. I came to do this because that food was better, for example. What option I chose was the option of the nafs. So we have two intentions here. One is for Allah and one is for myself. I'm not saying that I'm somebody that does everything completely for Allah. I do not have that ikhlas. But the goal is to reach true Tawheed and to think about Allah in all of our actions and to be a complete slave and submit to the will of God in everything we do. It doesn't mean that you don't go to work, you don't go to school, but every time I go to school and every time I go to work, I'm thinking this is what makes Allah happy. And therefore this becomes worship. Going to work becomes worship. Studying becomes worship. Cleaning the house becomes worship. Washing the dishes becomes worship. All of this becomes worship. But if I separate this and think that things happen by the conventional means and I can just do things just to do them, then I have been in ghafla. then I have forgotten Allah. So this Shahr Ramadan, remember that it is the Diyafatullah, it's a time to go back to Tawheed and try to make our intentions more for God. How do I know if that intention is for God? A lot of times that hard work, I know is for God. أفضل الأعمال أحمزها. The most difficult of action is actually the best of action. That action that nobody wants to do. For example, when it comes to this masjid, nobody wants to stay here and be the last person to lock up. Usually people want to go home. Why? I have to go to work the next day. I have to, sleep. I'm going to be missing out because, as we said, Shahr Ramadan is like a marathon. So many of you I know are busy, you have children, you're married, or you have class. So you want to go home earlier. But what is hard, that action that is accepted is the hard action. That is where Tawheed is. So how do you know if I'm a muwahhid? Is that I am not afraid of the hard action. Actually, I like that action. I like that action that nobody praises me, nobody sees me do it. I'm the one that, for example, some people here at night, you don't notice them, they take out the trash. Sometimes they even clean the toilets, right? As every night we have programs. It's those actions that they're not looking for somebody to reward them. They're not only looking for God, and these are those special actions. These are those Tawheedi actions. And when you know a community is good, you know that they're always wanting to volunteer to help. They're willing to sacrifice for God. Unfortunately, in this culture that we live in a culture that's always me, myself, my schedule, my family. If you want to meet somebody, you never say, I will go to your house and meet you, for example, drive all the way, wherever you are, it's easier for you, let me come. Say, okay, you come towards me more, in my, for example, in Orange County, then let's say you come this way, it'll be, okay, let's meet each other halfway. But it's never like, let me come and see you. Let me be completely sincere, and I'm not afraid. It's all about me and my schedule. I will come to Masjid as long as it's in my schedule. I will come to Islam as long as Islam fits in my schedule. But the whole point of Islam is that our lives go around Islam, not that Islam goes around our lives. We have to make sure we sacrifice, we change our lives so we can go around Islam. We can be a true muwahhid. That is when you know that your actions are good. But unfortunately, we live in a society, a culture that still has a lot of ego in it, has a lot of istikbar from ibadat, that we do not really want to ask Allah for help. We think that it's not needed, it's not good. But the wali of God asks for everything from God, even the salt that they put on their food. Even the salt that they put on their food, they're in need. They say, Allah, provide this for me. If you do not provide, then who else will provide for me? So we should, inshallah, take one more step towards Tawheed and monotheism. May Allah reward all of you. Inshallah, we're going to be having Dua al-Iftitah. If we can recite Amman Yujib, inshallah, 10 times. One of the brothers asked, he has a difficult problem for many years. He asked if you can in your majlis recite Amman Yujib. We ask Allah to, with this Amman Yujib, for all the mustad'afin, all the oppressed in Gaza, throughout the world. Allah give them relief, all of those that need help, and all the marhumeen. Let's recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala wa ala Muhammad wa ajib farj. You see this ayah mubarakah, which talks about Muthtar, which the traditions say Muthtar here is Imam al-Asr, is the Imam of the age. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء 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 أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. Thank you for your time. Sure.
So we live in a society that if you want to be somebody and you want to have some specific important role or